To ask the Minister to make a statement about the meeting between the Prime Minister and the former KGB agent Alexander Lebedev at the height of the Skripal crisis.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Alexander Lebedev is a well-known former KGB officer and also a former owner of the London Evening Standard newspaper. Yesterday, the Prime Minister told the Liaison Committee in response to questions from the Right Honourable Member for Kingston upon Hull opposite Hull North that he had met Mr Lebedev on a very few occasions. I understand that the Prime Minister also confirmed where he had met that he had met Mr Lebedev without officials present, and that he had subsequently reported those meetings to officials as required. I do not have any information about the content of any discussions that may or may not have been held with Mr Lebedev. All government ministers are made fully aware of their responsibilities to safeguard national security sensitive information. It's been the long-standing policy of all governments of all colours not to comment on intelligence or national security sensitive matters, as to do so could jeopardise the very security which it is the first duty of government to protect. In response to the Salisbury attack, the UK expelled 23 Russian intelligence officers and significantly strengthened our defences against Russian interference in the United Kingdom.
Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We've sought this UQ despite the meltdown in the government because it goes to the heart of our national security. Yesterday, the Prime Minister admitted to the Home Affairs and Public Accounts Committee chairs that in April 2018, as Foreign Secretary, he met with the former KGB officer Alexander Lebedev, father of Lord Lebedev, in Italy without any officials, without any security. He went there straight from a NATO meeting where the top item on the agenda was Russia, at the height of the Salisbury poisoning crisis, after Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia had been attacked, and before Charlie Rowley and Dawn Sturgis had been exposed to the remaining Novichok. This was a chemical weapon attack by Russian agents on British soil that targeted 2 British residents, had life-changing effects for a British police officer, and killed a British citizen. On the 20th of May this year, Alexander Lebedev was sanctioned by the Canadian government, a Five Eyes partner of the UK, for being one of the 14 identified people who have directly enabled Vladimir Putin's senseless war in Ukraine and bear responsibility for the pain and suffering of the people of Ukraine. The UK has not yet sanctioned him. The charges against the Prime Minister are not just about lack of integrity, they are about complete disregard for basic national security and the patriotic interests of this country. And those charges lie not just with the Prime Minister, but with all of those who have enabled him and covered up for him on this issue. So, did the Foreign Office, the Home Office and the Security Service know about this meeting in advance? Was a detailed record made after the event of the meeting? Because there are rumours that the Foreign Secretary was too drunk to properly remember. Is that true? There are also rumours that Alexander Lebedev was trying to arrange a phone call from the meeting with the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. Is that true? Did that phone call happen? The record of ministers' interest says the Foreign Secretary accepted hospitality in Italy for himself and a guest, but he travelled home alone. Who was that guest, and did that put him in a compromising position? The Prime Minister referred yesterday to several meetings with Alexander Lebedev without officials. When were the others? Were any of them while he was Prime Minister? And the Shadow Security Minister has been asking for confirmation that this meeting happened for months. So why have Home Office ministers, Cabinet Office ministers and Foreign Office ministers all been covering up? It is bad enough covering up for parties and breaking the law, but covering up over national security is a total disgrace. It puts all our safety and security at risk. It's not just the Prime Minister, it is the whole government that is letting the country down.
Staff. I'm not expecting to take everybody. It's going to be shorter with a lot of other business.
Mr Speaker, I take issues of our national security extremely seriously, which is why I am at this bench today. Day after day, ministers of this government, especially those in the Foreign Office Minister, make decisions affecting the safety and security of UK citizens, in the case of the Foreign Office ministers, especially UK citizens overseas. On the subject of sanctions, the UK has, of course, introduced world-leading sanctions packages since Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. That is over 12,000 individuals. I cannot comment on any further sanctions, as we never comment on sanctions in advance. But I can confirm, Mr. Speaker, that since February the 24th and today, I, like other Foreign Office ministers, have carried out my duties in signing off a number of those sanctions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last 48 hours of this hapless government have been quite disgusting to any decent person who's been submitting to the spectacle of it. And the last few years haven't been much cop either. Somebody who is deeply inappropriate for public office, not least the highest office, aided and abetted and enabled by venality and cowardice by people who are now falling over themselves to compete for sanctimony and hypocrisy. His toxic legacy will live after him. Now, we don't celebrate on these benches the departure of the Prime Minister. Like getting rid of a headache, we're just glad it's going. But his toxic legacy will live after him, and we'll all need to deal with the consequences of this disastrous administration. His toxic legacy on inflicting his disastrous Brexit on us all, asleep at the wheel over climate change and allowing a cost of living crisis to accumulate, which all of our citizens are dealing with, inaction on climate change, breaking international law over Northern Ireland. We will all of us be dealing with this thereafter. And this revelation, and I'm glad to hear the Minister takes national security seriously, and I don't doubt it.
First of all, it's meant to be relevant to actually what we're debating. I've had nothing yet, and you've just lost you've used your full minute. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to actually put a question.
Forgive me, Mr. Speaker. I'm taking this stuff really seriously, and I am disgusted.
The rest of us are.
I'm trying to chime with the mood of the House rather than the government. The Minister takes national security seriously, but it's quite obvious from the Prime Minister's admission yesterday that he has serious questions to answer about it. So I appreciate the Minister's perhaps not in a position to make a proper answer, but will she at least allow the prospect of a police investigation into the Prime Minister and his influence over the influence that Russian individuals have over him, because his toxic legacy over national security cannot be something he can evade responsibility for. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I would say that, and then I'll follow up as well to the answer from the Honourable Lady opposite. The Prime Minister did commit yesterday that he would follow up with the Honourable Member's question at the Liaison Committee. He did commit to that. I have asked about whether or not there is more detailed information about the discussions, but I do not have any information about the content of those discussions at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the Minister inadvertently misled us earlier, because the Prime Minister yesterday, I was at the Liaison Committee, did not say what she said. He did not say, to the best of my memory anyway, that he had notified other officials. If he had notified other officials, surely, as the Minister would understand, that meeting would have appeared on the list on the transparency records of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office for April 2018, and it is not there. So either she has misled us inadvertently today, or the Prime Minister did so perhaps more deliberately previously.
Mr. Speaker, I was obviously not at the Liaison Committee yesterday. I was, as you may know, giving the ministerial statement in order to fast-track the ratification of Finland and Sweden to joining NATO, another measure that is absolutely crucial to the safety and security here, and then later on in the chamber ensuring that we pass the funding. In terms of the question, therefore, I can repeat again what I said in my opening words. It is my understanding that the Prime Minister confirmed that where he had met he had met Mr. Lebedev without officials present, and that he subsequently reported those meetings to officials. That is my understanding, and that is what I have been told. If that is not accurate reflection, then I do apologise, but this is not me misleading. That was what I was told. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to intelligence reports that I have seen, a serving according to intelligence reports I've seen, a serving FSB officer reported in 2017, and I quote, Alexander Lebedev is considered by the FSB to be an important asset. More recently, he has significantly expanded his businesses in occupied Crimea, pleaded with the Kremlin for economic help for occupied Crimea, and was revealed as the indirect owner of a company called Energomash, which supplies the Russian nuclear program. How is it possible for the Prime Minister to stay in office if he is conspiring with an agent of the Russian state?
Thank you very much. As the member opposite knows, I cannot comment about any potential future sanctions that may be introduced, because we never do that in advance. So I cannot give any more comment on the particular individual that is discussing. In terms of following up, because I know that the honourable previous member asked me to be more clear about what the Prime Minister said at the liaison committee, I have just been passed a note that apparently the Prime Minister says that he thinks he mentioned this meeting to officials. That is, I'm reporting what I have been told. Thank you.
I have to say to the Minister, it's deeply unsatisfactory that she comes to the House so ill-prepared, because this matter has been doggedly pursued by the Honourable Member for Halifax for many, many months. Can I just say to the Minister, does she agree with me that in light of the admissions that were made at the liaison committee yesterday, it would be wholly inappropriate for the Prime Minister, if he is about to resign, to try and stay as a caretaker Prime Minister in light of these very serious allegations that reflect on his ability to keep this country safe?
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is expected to make a statement shortly to the people of this country, and I obviously cannot comment on that in advance. I do hear what she says.
Just for my clarification, the Minister previously said we will be getting something in this House. Are we now saying it's to the people, not to this House?
I understand that he's intending to make a press statement that to the people of this country.
So not this House, I take it. That is totally not satisfactory. Alistair Cameron.
Satisfactory, Mr. Speaker, if I may. I admire your magnificent understatement there. Surely this admission, though, illustrates why this man cannot remain as Prime Minister, even as a caretaker. He is simply not to be trusted. I've seen 4 other Prime Ministers stand at that dispatch box in my time in this House, and I cannot imagine any one of them becoming involved in an enterprise such as this. The relationship with Russia goes right through this government. We were told 4 months ago that we would get the report into the golden visa schemes. We still haven't got it today. When will we see that report published? Why has it been delayed?
The visa scheme has ceased.
Directly.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, it is truly horrifying what we've heard, and deeply, deeply disturbing and worrying that the Prime Minister, then as the Foreign Secretary, met with an agent of Russia. Can I ask the Minister, because I've not actually heard this, would she actually condemn that meeting?
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I just need to repeat again that all government ministers are made fully aware of their responsibilities to safeguard national security sensitive information, as I am and as others are. And I cannot comment any further because I do not have any further details of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Minister really can't come to this House so unprepared that she can't give us any answers when the Prime Minister has now belatedly admitted that he met an agent of the Russian state whilst Foreign Secretary without any security or anyone else to listen to what he had to say to Putin's henchmen. She has now got to come to this House properly prepared and tell us why this disgraced Prime Minister has any right to stay in office a second longer, given that he is now a threat, a direct threat to our national security?
As I said earlier, I take this national security and the security of our citizens extremely seriously, which is why it is absolutely vital that the government continues to have Foreign Office ministers in place. I have inquired as to whether or not there are further details of the meetings and these alleged meetings, and I do not have any further details at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, given that the then Foreign Secretary went from the NATO meeting to these meetings, did he have any government papers with him in his possession at the time? And secondly, we know that the Prime Minister has been very careless in the past with his mobile phone number being available in public, I think for 15 years. Did he have his personal electronic devices with him at the time? And if he did, were they searched and examined by the security services after that meeting?
Mr. Speaker, as I have said again, I do not have any further details at this time. I have asked to see if there are further details, but I do not have the details at this time. The Prime Minister, however, has announced that he is stepping down and will be making a statement shortly, as we know.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why did it take until yesterday for the Prime Minister to admit that he met a KGB agent in secret? Will there be a published report on this matter?
Mr. Speaker, he was questioned yesterday and he answered the question yesterday. Today is today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we know, the Prime Minister often goes into meetings, has conversations, and then has a lapse of memory. He had a lapse of memory after the meeting with Alexander Lebedev. Has he now recalled and informed the Minister of the conversation, that meeting? Because it's not just a national security matter, but Alexander Lebedev owns businesses in illegally occupied Crimea, which is Ukrainian, not Russian territory. So it's a matter not just for us, but also for the country of Ukraine.
Mr. Speaker, at the time, let us remember that at the time, we had this devastating attack against a civilian on UK soil involving chemical weapons. That led to a massive effort by the Foreign Office to coordinate the expulsion of Russian diplomats from embassies all across the world. At this current time, the UK is also working with our allies across the world to counter Russian disinformation and to help remind the people across the world about the brutal and illegal invasion of Russia against Ukraine. In terms of the information that he requests, I do not have any further information at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, I hope that in answer to my question and those of my colleagues, where the Minister has said she doesn't have the information at this time, I do hope we will get answers in writing in due course. But my question is, what reassurance can the Minister give us that the Prime Minister has had no meetings with any other KGB agents or other people who pose a threat to our national security?
In terms of writing, I understand that at the liaison committee yesterday, the Prime Minister committed to follow up in writing with the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee. So there is a commitment to put information in writing, and that is important. I cannot comment on any other further meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't think the Foreign Minister understands quite how serious this issue is, not only about our own national security, but at this time where Ukraine is defending its own right to its own land, it is completely undermining President Zelensky. So what analysis has her office undertaken to understand the impact of the Prime Minister's secret meetings?
So can I just say that that Russia is a top national security priority for this government. We have made huge strides to counter the threat by the Russian state. The National Security Council agreed the Russia strategy back in 2017. The government has published a full and comprehensive response to the ISC report back in January 2020, implementing a majority of the committee's recommendations. We have closed the Tier 1 visa route, a visa route which indeed was introduced, I believe, by the party opposite. We continue to call out Russian malign activities where they occur across the globe. Thank you.
Alison Thunes.
Mr. Speaker, Open Democracy has reported that the Conservative Party has received £62,000 in donations from Russian-linked donors since the current escalation of the conflict in Ukraine began, including a further £50,000 from Lyubov Chernukin, who is married to Putin's former Deputy Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, we know that money buys influence. What analysis has she done of the influence that buys and where it goes in national security implications?
Mr. Speaker, transparency of information about political donations is really important. Only individuals on the UK electoral roll or UK registered companies are allowed to make political donations. It is an offence for political parties and other campaigners to receive donations from impermissible sources, and that includes donations from foreign nationals living abroad. That is the law, and that is the law that all parties, including the Conservative Party, need to uphold.
Well,
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, given the revelations of the last 24 hours and the suspicions which have existed for quite a number of months, if not years, why would any of our allies now share any sensitive information with us while the current Prime Minister remains in office?
Because the UK has been leading the international efforts to stand up for Ukraine against Russian aggression. That is why allies across the world have been working with the UK, because we have been helping to lead the efforts to stand up for the people of Ukraine in the attack against their sovereignty, their democracy and their freedom.
Oh, Jim Shah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That the meeting with Alexander Lebedev took place is not the issue in question. There has been much controversy surrounding the meeting. Many feel that there's a lack of detail of what took place. Can I very respectfully say to the Minister who I have fondness for, will a full disclosure of all that has been discussed be made available with Alexander Lebedev? Will the threat to national security, given Lebedev's close links with the KGB and the Kremlin, be disclosed at the same time as well? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I cannot disclose any further information at this time. I understand members want further information. He will also recognise that we would not disclose any information that might further put our own security of our citizens at risk, and that is extremely important about why we do not disclose information from time to time if it was to put people at risk. However, in answer to the questions that were asked by the honourable member, the chair of the Select Committee yesterday, the Prime Minister did commit to write to her. She has that commitment from him. He has, of course, said since then that he will be stepping down and is expected to give further information on that. Thank you.
Right, just before we start business questions, I'd like to refer to the exchange between the leader and myself last week about the Youth Parliament, that we will have to lay for the Youth Parliament